I'd now like to invite Katie Patommel to take the floor. Kate is a doctoral candidate in medicine at Murray Edwards College, having obtained a Master of Science in Molecular and Cellular Biology from the University of Glasgow. She won the right to speak through open audition. Katie, you have the ears of the House.
Thank you, Madam President, and all of you for having me today here to speak. It's an incredible honor, especially as someone who's not a native speaker, to have made it this far. So, to the motion. One of the great challenges in the world is knowing enough about a subject to think that you're right, but not enough about a subject to know that you're wrong. Neil deGrasse Tyson. Have you ever been in that situation where you had to write an essay, and because you barely had any time and you went to a party last night, you decide, I'll just do this about something that I know a lot about. That subject, I know so much. And then as you start doing your research and you learn more and more and more, it becomes harder and harder because you start to realize the boundaries of your own ignorance. Well, that effect has a name. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. It is when people of little knowledge overestimate their ability and knowledge in a certain subject, whereas people who are objectively judged to be experts underestimate their ability. In a nutshell, it's what happens when you're a new PM called Liz Truss trying to fix all of Britain's problems overnight using a mini budget. Why am I bringing this up? Well, I'm bringing it up because we all know that the debate tonight is not really about experts. Otherwise, we would have to be comfortable with science being done without experiments, history without books, archaeology without excavations. And even in the most fringy internet circles, one will be hard-pressed to find people who actually believe that. What we have heard from the proposition tonight is, not so much objection, it's not an objection to studies or expertise as such. Otherwise, it would be difficult to explain, Johan referring to Tengel, who, even if he refers to them as old man writing emails, an epidemiologist must be called an expert. I don't know what else you want to call them. In other words, the underlying question up for debate tonight is not, do we believe that we need experts to build a functioning and productive society, but rather, must we trust the expert consensus? Or can we, with university YouTube and college Wikipedia right at our fingertips, legitimately take a me and my experts approach? What do I mean with me and my experts? I'm referring to the assumption that because information is widely available through the internet and we are rational creatures, we are intuitively able to educate ourselves to A, discern what an expert consensus on any given topic is, and B, challenge this consensus based on our own research and the good old common sense. On face value, that sounds like a reasonable enough proposition, doesn't it? I'm sure most of us here are frequenters on YouTube. I know all of you guys that are watching online clearly are. And we all use Google Scholar, etc. for our research. So what is the difference between researching for a uni essay and researching for your own pleasure in general education? Why do we need universities like this one, when seemingly we can achieve the same kind of expertise just by using the internet? Why must we trust experts, at least in some specialized areas, rather than making up our own mind? Trust people who perhaps just want to scare us, who may even have an ulterior agenda? To answer that, let's turn back once again to the COVID-19 pandemic, where Joan is already taking us. Because it's my experience of that time which really convinced me of the importance of auditioning for tonight's debate. When I first arrived here in the summer of 2020 and met my new colleagues in the lab, the first thing that I noticed about them was about how tired they all looked. Tired because whilst everyone had been told to stay at home, they had been working without a break, day and night, weekends, in front of their screens in the laboratory, trying to understand this new virus that was seemingly shutting down the whole world. None of them got a salary rise. Indeed, they haven't even gotten a salary adjustment accounting for inflation yet. Almost none got promoted, and whilst there are 1 or 2 professors who achieved something akin to fame, the great majority of them, who are all those who did the legwork, including most of the professors, got no recognition whatsoever for their work during COVID. For them to have had an ulterior motive is unbelievable, simply because there is no motive, there was nothing to gain. There was nothing in for them. Nothing apart from gaining expertise and knowledge regarding a novel pathogen from China, which had caused the pandemic. The second thing which struck me was how careful they all were when discussing anything related to COVID. Not once have I heard them make quick, undifferentiated judgments on anti-COVID policies, lockdowns, vaccines, etc. Whenever a judgment was being made, it was unspeculative, based on real data and on an aspect of COVID management which was clearly within their competence. And yet I've experienced myself how great the temptation and pressure was to exceed that competence, to speculate, to deliver answers, the certainties which we all longed for. Being of a more conservative political bent myself, I had quite a few friends who soon enough turned to COVID and vaccine skepticism. And through conversations and text exchanges I had with them, I realized how difficult it is to communicate the scientific method, statistical probabilities, and data to lay people. What would typically happen, especially in connection to the vaccine, is that people would start to set YouTube videos, blogs, anecdotes about people suffering from severe myocarditis, which had deeply scared them. And then they would end up backing it up with the title of a scientific paper they found somewhere online, which suggested that the conclusions agreed with them. So I would then end up spending the rest of the day examining that paper and asking them, well, but what about the data collection method? What about their statistical model? What about the size of their study group? What about this fact that this study was conducted in Sweden or Israel, which has completely different population dynamics, was fighting a different variant at the time than we are, and where people have a different genetic makeup, etc., etc. I would often be asked to comment on vaccine trial data, and those questions would be really, really hard to answer. Because as a scientist, I can't go beyond the data. I can't give someone the certainty they long for, and which they unconsciously perceive to get from YouTube doctors, etc. I couldn't tell someone that they would under no circumstances ever suffer from any side effects from the vaccine, because any medicine known to man can possibly cause side effects. That is just fact. So, of course, the COVID trial data showed that too. But that wasn't good enough, because the doctors on YouTube seemed to keep telling them that it's almost certain they would die, that it's almost certain they would suffer from severe side effects, using much stronger language than they would ever dare to when discussing scientific data. Language which appeared to justify an adherence to a particular stance on a scientific topic with a political, sometimes almost religious zeal. Something which I've observed, by the way, on both sides of the debate, so I'm not trying to pick on a particular group here. There's a lot of information out there. Some of it is true, some isn't. Some is being communicated clearly. Some is accidentally being misquoted. Sometimes it's being twisted and turned to fit into the mold of the ideology of the authors trying to communicate it. Sadly, it's often really hard to tell what kind of data and information is what. The problem with free online content is that its greatest strength is also its greatest weakness: crowdfunding. Social media influencers make money by being popular and getting clicks, as well as by attracting patrons which pay for them and buy merchandise. The strength of that system is we have complete control over who we want to support with our money. The weakness is that it is not accurate information that is being rewarded, but rather content which elicits an emotional response, as Laura very rightly points out in her new book, State of Fear, which I'm sure you're going to hear a lot about. Have you ever compared one of Jordan Peterson's early videos or online lectures to his more recent content? Have you noticed how much more angry he sounds in his recent content? How much more blatant his statements are? This is a perfect example of an academic expert increasingly being turned into a populist and ideologue by social media. And when that conversion from scientific objectivity to ideological subjectivity happens to data, to scientific questions, rather than just people, we are in for a bad ride. Because it means that, for example, healthcare decisions are no longer made on the basis of medicine with the patient's health at heart, but rather on the basis of political ideology, which care little about the health of a particular individual. If anyone's trying to make a point of information, please scream, because I won't be able to see you, okay? So, yeah, please go.
Would you not say that Jordan Peterson's more blatant comments are now being said in a forum that's no longer academic, therefore it's irrelevant?
Well, I agree with that, but the problem is he still styles himself as a professor, so he still uses that air of academic expert when he no longer is one, or is speaking about topics that he's no expert in, which can be very misleading. So,
Following
Yes.
Haven't you, throughout your speech, sort of run into the limit of experts? When you talk to your friends, many of them would be reluctant to give an answer one way or another. But the society does not work like that. You need people who are able to communicate messages properly. Isn't it that there is enough of experts, and then at some point you need people to make decisions, to take it beyond that expertise?
Well, I think that's a great question, thank you. I think that's why I'm trying to advocate for expert consensus. Because the thing is, of course, one expert by themselves is not going to be able to solve all of our problems. But by having a community of experts that agree and exchange ideas, such as Matt suggested in his TED Talk, like when ideas have sex, when people all know their specialized idea or do a specialized thing, and they're able to put that all together, that's when we get progress. And so what I'm advocating for, simply, is the idea that we can't just pick and choose which experts we want to listen to. We need to take everything into account when we make a decision. And that's a problem with populism. You end up just picking your favorite experts and then going by that, whether or not they are right or not.
Point of information.
Yes.
Do you know that experts are the ones that took America to Iraq to have the war? Experts who said that there is a nuclear war in Iraq. You said we shouldn't listen to some of the experts, take them all, and have a consensus, but some experts are very problematic.
I'm not trying to say that all experts are always going to be correct. I think experts need to have humility, and there are mistakes are going to be made. We're never going to arrive at a perfect system. But I think the rate of mistakes is going to be lower if we trust experts rather than if we try to banish them from our society. And I can't comment on the Iraq war because I'm not a politician or a political scientist. I have absolutely no expertise in that subject. So I'm not going to be making a statement about something I know nothing about. I think I should get to the end now. I hope by now I have convinced you that experts are incredibly important for our society. So please vote in opposition of this motion. And before I finish, one last thing. If you think that facts rather than fear should prevail, please support your lecturers as they're going to strike this winter. Because at the moment, academics in this country are paid almost just above the poverty line, and they're not getting inflation. And if you want objective research to keep being a thing, support them and make the university pay for every single minute of teaching you lose, because it's only when it's expensive for them that they're finally going to give in. Thank you.